I might come up with some stuff as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just go with me.
I, I, I am here. I am already here with you.
Hello, everyone. I decided to bring back one of my favorite people, Marc.
Hello.
Hi, Marc.
Hello.
Because I wanted to ask him a few questions about one of his mentors. Hi, Marc. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I am so excited you found the time for me to do this. Can you please introduce yourself for those three people who might be watching who don't know you just yet?
Absolutely. My name is Marc Aarons. I like long walks on the beach. I like listening to Backstreet, but no, but so I am the founder of 80/20 Solutions, and we're a growth consultancy for entrepreneurs who are launching courses and coaching programs. And I show people, how to launch their coaching programs in 8 weeks or less, courses and coaching programs.
That's awesome. So far you've been doing coaching, like one-on-one or group coaching?
Both, yeah.
Okay, and now I know that you are working on a digital product
Yes.
around this. Can you talk a little bit more about this and how it came about?
Yeah. Basically, I have been in this industry now for almost like 10 years or something like that. And I've been the lead coach of a program that's had 800 entrepreneurs in it. And my background is in science. And so I'm always trying to find what's the repeatable method that we can use to create consistent results and to always learn with every single test that we're running. And I've been developing my framework for creating those results. And I'm now codifying that and putting it into a course so that others can create the results all around the world, basically, without having to get on a call with me specifically to do it. That way I can impact a whole lot more people. And because I only work with people who are trying to move people from the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to the top, we're going to be doing a whole lot of social good in the world as they also build their businesses. That's ultimately what this is about.
Yeah, that's awesome. You just recently told me how you want to help those people who are working on making the world better.
Yes.
Why is this important to you?
I believe same thing that my father told me when I was like 8 years old, that every generation should do better than the one that came before. And that ultimately looks like progress, but not just any progress. It's not really progress if people are hurt in the process or people get left behind.
Yeah.
Like it's just not. And so ultimately it's about people and the progression of people, and of course ultimately bigger scale like the environment and stuff like that. But for me, I truly believe in growth and then also balance, and so balanced growth, and that's ultimately why I'm doing this and what I want for others as well.
Yeah. You also recently told me about this amazing example or success story, rather, that one of your clients had since the pandemic hit. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What happened there and how you helped them?
Yeah, sure. So I think you're talking about Zach. Zach is one of the stories that I'm just proud of. I mean, I've worked with many people and stuff over the years, but the pandemic has been difficult, to say the least, for all of us in different ways. And Zach, his background's in the film industry, and he helps people in the film industry. And then when COVID came along, that just shut everything down for them. And then, of course, like it's word, it's like, hey, would anyone purchase anything? Can he still help people here? And within 1 week, we had about 100 sales opportunities.
Wow.
And then within about 6 to 7 weeks, he booked about $35,000 worth of sales.
Mm.
And I tell people, I'm like, if Zach can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Like,
And
it
again,
works.
this is all since the pandemic hit.
Yes.
People are buying.
Yes.
All right. Now I want to go into that question that I mentioned in the introduction in the beginning, to talk a little bit about your mentor, your secret weapon, whom you mentioned the last time we did this, Jay Abraham. Can you please tell everyone again, maybe some people don't know who Jay Abraham is, and can you talk about his philosophy of preeminence?
Sure. Jay is great. Like, he's known. He's sometimes called a $21.7 billion man.
Mm-hmm.
And he's called that because that's how much he's generated for his clients. And he's been a consultant for decades. Literally, he's advised folks like Tony Robbins, Damon John of Shark Tank, Ramit Sethi, and many others. Um, just a brilliant man. And I've had the opportunity to also learn from him directly. And he's had his strategy of preeminence is something that also had a very big impact on me when I first learned of it. And basically, the strategy of preeminence, and this would be a worthy thing for folks to look up. It's probably still on YouTube where it's called the advanced strategy of preeminence, and Jay tells you himself directly, but it's like a 31-minute video where he breaks it down. And and so this is just, again, like super short summary that like gets to the heart of it. And it requires that you put your clients at the center of your world.
Yeah.
And he also then goes on to share that you've got three kinds of clients. You have what some people might describe as customers or buyers, but clients denotes a higher level of responsibility to the relationship. Customers, that could be a transactional relationship, but with clients, you're typically working with them for a longer period of time and for their best interest. You have their best interest at heart, et cetera, et cetera. And the other group of clients that you have are the folks on your team, because you're also serving them as well. And so, again, you're putting them at the center of your world, trying to make sure that you're serving them extremely well. And I may be misremembering this last category, but I believe the third client might actually be yourself. But again, putting people first and thinking over the long term what's going to be most beneficial for them, which also requires sometimes in the moment saying no to what might seem like a short-term win. But if it's not in their best interest, then you just bounded by ethics to refuse that.
Yeah, I love that word, ethics.
It's a word we could all use more these days.
That's for sure. Yeah, speaking about ethics and mission and vision, before we hit record, we talked a little bit how you are redefining some things for yourself right now, for your business. What's going through your head right now?
Business-wise, I've done a whole lot of coaching and consulting, and I'm currently in the midst of transforming my business so that it is not as reliant upon me. Creating my core methodology, core frameworks, core curriculum to show folks how to do what it is that I've done for myself as well as others in a repeatable and predictable way. That's part of the restructuring that's happening right now in my business. And if there is something else you're thinking about, happy to talk about that too.
Well, I mean, the whole idea, we talked a little bit about you are helping people who want to, change the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, there must be some sort of underlying reason why you want to help those people. So what are your personal, I guess, values, and what is your personal mission?
One of my highest values is quality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, and for the purpose of increasing and maintaining quality in the world, improving the quality of our lives, I believe that if the pipe dream, if you will, is for every single person to get to the top of Maslow's hierarchy needs, which looks
Mm-hmm.
like self-actualization, transcendence, and supporting each other. But in that kind of world where we each have mastered our unique gifts and can contribute and share that with others, then we're in the best possible position to tackle all of the greatest challenges that we're facing today, whether it be climate change and so on and so forth, and to live in a way that's harmonious with the environment and also with ourselves. Um, as Einstein says, the problems of today can't be solved with like thinking of today. I don't think that's like the exact quote, but that's like the sentiment. And so for us to get to where it is to get to a better tomorrow, we have to level up our thinking. We have to level up
Mm-hmm.
our actions. And so that's part of what's driving this underneath progression and bringing it back to the statement that I've carried with me since I was like 8 years old. Every generation should do better than the generation that came before. And only way for us to do that is if we level up, period.
Yeah. Thank you. I love this.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to Jay Abraham, I watched recently his complimentary lectures that he released right before the pandemic hit. It's called Navigating Economic Headwinds.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple of things that I really love that he talks about. And I just wanted to, pick your brain about that as well, like how you also approach this for yourself and how you coach your clients through those ideas. So one of the things he said, in difficult times, it's a good idea to find or forge. I absolutely love this word, forge, a path to prosperity. And then he said, you cannot go into fear-based mode.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about that?
I believe there's healthy and unhealthy fear.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's instinctual fears that like we come born with. And they've served us and our ancestors to keep us alive, and they're what's gotten us to this point. However, we also have uh, unhealthy fears that they don't serve us. They don't serve that progression that we spoke about,
Mm-hmm.
that balanced growth towards our greatest potential. And I believe that's the kind of fear that Jay's describing there. And so, with respect to that, with making decisions from out of fear in any uncertain environment, whether it's uncertain economic environment or health environment or what have you, it typically blinds us to seeing all of the data points, seeing the world for what it is, for us to make the most educated decision. Because what tends to happen when you make a decision based in fear is the mind becomes tunnel visioned,
Mm-hmm.
block things out, and you hyper focus on whatever the perceived threat is.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if the threat you're facing can't physically be seen, from the point of the mind, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, there's just no way for you to even like shut that off or turn it off. It's a terrible state to be in, because then it doesn't pass, and then you're in a state of perpetual fear, and then that continues to affect your decision making. Then you don't sleep properly at night, and then it just spirals downward. as opposed to putting boundaries around it
Mm-hmm.
and then letting go of what's outside of your control and focusing on what's in your control. It is a difficult thing to do when we are struck by fear, which is
Yeah.
typically how it happens. But for us to serve ourselves and others from our best selves requires us to insert a pause between that stimulus and our response. And I'm not the first to have thought of this. I think it's like Mark Victor Frankl, and I think I've also seen it. Stephen Covey,
Mm-hmm.
other great leadership figures and stuff who've spoken about these concepts. It's also popular in mindfulness and so on and so forth. But essentially, inserting a space, a gap between uh, stimulus and reaction so that you
Mm-hmm.
can take intentional action allows you to then create better outcomes that are in better service of yourself and others.
Have you coached people who don't recognize fear as fear?
Yes, the term for that is denial.
Mm.
And I am I am totally guilty of that too. Like
We
I
all
think
are.
it human condition to protect ourselves from something that could be so threatening to us. We might even deny its very existence.
Mm.
To
Uh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You probably know Vanessa Van Edwards, this
Yes.
expert on body language. I think it's she who I love that phrase. Fear is a cross dresser. I think she says. Right. So so I mean, it can manifest in so many different ways. So I wonder, I mean, I see this sometimes with my coaching clients. When you start unpacking it, that it manifests in so many different ways. So how do you help your customers, your clients with that? How do you bring them back from fear into productive environment?
One technique from that's somewhat popular in sales training is pace lead.
Mm.
Are you familiar with it?
Mm-mm.
So when someone is for someone to trust you,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they first have to see part of themselves in you,
Mm.
because we typically don't attack ourselves. It's not in our self-interest to do so. And so if we see some likeness in another person, um, we are more likely to be friendly towards that person because, oh, they're like me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not threatening to me. Therefore, this person is also safe. And the pacing refers to pacing in a conversation. And
Mm.
so there's your it could even look like speaking at the same speed as the other
Mm-hmm.
person. If you've ever had a conversation with someone where you're talking kind of slow and they're like talking to super fast, and you're just like you're trying to keep up with them, and you're like, whoa, I haven't had coffee yet in the morning. Like, this is stressful.
Mm.
Um, or the opposite, where it's just like your brain is on, and it's like, and then someone's like responding real slow, and it's like, okay, I can't, like, this is kind of bringing me down. And so it's just either way, there's a mismatch, there's conflict.
Mm.
And so with pacing, it's like, oh, we're on the same page. And then continuing to do that earns the trust necessary for leadership,
Mm.
where it's like, okay, now that we trust each other, we know we're on the same page with these pre-established points. What if I suggested something that was a little bit different?
Mm.
And so that's less likely to then create a negative response or to just be rejected outright, because there's a basis of trust or a basis
Mm-hmm.
of friendship.
Yeah.
Basically, it's coming from a trusted source
Yeah.
as opposed to an unknown source.
Yeah.
And so that's where the concept of pace lead comes in, and how that can be used in a to facilitate a conversation where what might be needed is a change of perspective. And that could be as simple as, no, actually, I see where you're coming from. That makes sense because da, 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 da. I can empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can also see this other scenario here. What do you think about that? And then they might share, and it's like, well, what if we approach it in a different way? Here's what that might look like. And just like that, we've gone from, oh, we're in this conversation just looking at things from this one perspective to now looking at things from a different perspective.
Yeah. Does it help people to become a little bit more confident in that sense with that technique?
Not immediately. Sometimes it can. What I would say it helps with is creating options.
Mm-hmm.
And when we see when people have an adverse reaction to something, sometimes that's the underlying emotional experience that we're talking about that they might be having is fear.
Yeah.
And one of the things that causes fear is the experience or the perception that we are trapped
Mm-hmm.
or that we're threatened. But if we have additional options, then we're less threatened because ultimately what being threatened or being in fear is about is a lack of power.
Yeah.
And power is options and the ability to carry those options out. And so just the presentation of new options begins to empower someone.
Mm-hmm.
And if they inherently see and believe that they're able to carry out those options, oh, I have power in this situation, or this person is helping me to have power in this situation. That's inherently not threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that builds trust. If you empower someone, more trust, they have more options, and they feel less threatened.
Yeah. The reason I brought up confidence is also one of the things that Jay said in that lecture that I watched that I loved. He said, opportunity favors the confident.
Mm-hmm.
Let's unpack that.
It it does. If you look at, regardless of what you're executing on, operating from a place of high amount of uncertainty uh, can increase the odds of failure.
Mm-hmm.
If you're walking a tightrope and you're more uncertain, you could fall off.
Mm-hmm.
If you are driving a car and you feel uncertain about your ability to maybe change the gears if you're driving a manual car, that just that perception, that fear, could cause you to operate it less well and then increase the likelihood of having an accident. Um, and there are some scenarios where if you have a higher level of uncertainty, um, well, the key thing I should say is so long as it's not delusional.
Mm.
If what's helpful is to have an accurate level
Mm-hmm.
of confidence. Your confidence comes from evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are sure because you've got a track record of being able to accomplish this thing. That's rational confidence.
Yeah.
But irrational confidence is to then go into something believing you're going to be amazing at it, and if you have no basis for doing so.
Mm.
Like, it's just there are some scenarios where that in itself, acting as if might actually help you, but it doesn't change the fact that it's irrational,
Yeah.
and that in some cases can actually hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this idea of, being certain and having evidence, and it is helping you to be confident. It's also something that I like to say to my coaching clients, because this Clifton Strengths assessment is based on so much evidence, and once you take the assessment, it's like, these are your talents.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. You mentioned also certainty. The product that you're creating is all about helping entrepreneurs, agency owners, and so on to get to the level of certainty to get success in what they're doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about your methodology?
So I'll say this. One of the things that one of the states that it creates is, yes, people do become more certain, but the thing that they want certainty is like a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using it to be able to create more freedom in their lives. That's what it's ultimately about. And freedom to become their best selves and to have a more positive impact on the world around them.
Yeah.
Because, like me, many of my clients, many of the people I work with, have been in positions where they felt like they could have done better. But because maybe there was a boss, or maybe there was resistance within themselves, or maybe there was doubt, whatever it was, whether it was an internal or external block, there's something that held them back from being their best and putting their best out into the world to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
That is really at the root of what it is that I help people with. And what I help them, the way that I help them is with this method. One of the frameworks that I talk about is the sales certainty framework. And one of the reasons why people aren't able to get the sales that they want is, first off, they don't know what's required to have sales certainty. They have a bunch of sales questions, and certainty is not what they have. And so for us to be able to answer those sales questions, first we need to make sure that we're even asking the right questions. And there's 5 core questions that we need to answer. Sales basically stands for, the S stands for sales opportunities. That's one of the first things that people need to know. They need to know how many sales opportunities they have, because again, if you don't have any, you could have the best thing in the world, but nobody to buy. So it doesn't matter. Second thing is they need to know what amount people will pay. Because again, if you're either undercharging, you're just not going to make enough money. And if you're overcharging, no one's going to buy because they don't see that much value in it. And so you've got to find that right, like, diamond price window to make sure that folks are actually going to buy it. The third thing is knowing what the long and short-term value it is that you're going to be providing. And value is another way to describe solving problems. You want to get someone from point A to point where they want to be. That's valuable. Value can also be described as the distance traveled between point A and point where you want to be. And so you need to be able to be clear on that, because that's what people are paying you for. That's the third thing. The fourth thing, the E, stands for the exact offer that they want. You could tell them the value that they're wanting, but if it's not in the right format that they believe that they need or would be most helpful for them, they're not going to be able to create that value. You're not going to be able to help them create that value. They're not going to pay for it as well. And within the format, there's features and all sorts of stuff that, we break down and stuff as well. But that's the fourth thing. And then the fifth thing is the sales timing. That's what that last S stands for, sales timing. You need to know how soon they want to buy. How soon do they want this value? Because if they want it yesterday, cool. They buy right now. But if they want 3 months from now, trying to get them to buy right now may turn them off. They may never buy from you, even though that they would have bought from you before if you knew that they were going to buy, because now you're selling too hard. It's not the right timing.
Yeah.
You're becoming too pushy, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you take too long to sell to them and they were ready to go right now, then they go find somebody else.
Yeah.
So again, if you know what those 5 parts of sales stand for and you can create sales answers to those questions for your situation, then you'll have sales certainty.
Yeah. I like this, the word that you brought up just now, pushy salesman. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
what is everything that is not good about being a pushy salesman?
It's really about being a bad human being.
Mm.
I typically stay away from value judgments, but one of the number one values, I think we spoke about this earlier, is relationships come first.
Mm.
And a sale is just a part of a client relationship as you guys are moving from one step to the next. And another one of my mentors talks about the 12 steps of human intimacy. There's a book on this. And it's very interesting because the first thing is eye to eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then at some point now you're talking to each other and so on and so forth. But there are steps to human intimacy. Now we are in marketing and sales. We're not trying to get people into bed, so you only need like around 8 steps. And the interesting thing about that is you're still creating intimacy in a healthy human relationship, any healthy human relationship, whether you're selling or not. And if you skip 2 or 3 steps, the word for that is assault, and you should be locked up. Because if you meet somebody on the street and then you just start touching them, that's how assault works. It's wrong. You're not there. You moved too fast, and that's just creepy. And so if you're marketing and selling and you're moving too fast, that's also creepy. And people will react accordingly. They won't want to have anything to do with you because what you are doing is you are violating the boundaries of that relationship.
Mm.
And in any healthy human relationship, it's permission based. You take it one step at a time, so on and so forth, and you build up to it. So that's why pushy salespeople are creepy.
Thank you. And I love your facial expression. It's just
it is like it just
I know exactly when it's like, yeah, when I get an unsolicited phone call and somebody's trying to sell me I don't know, car insurance, and I don't even have a car, and it's just like, hang up.
Yeah.
I'm
A
done.
natural human response to having boundaries be violated is anger. Anger exists on a spectrum. You'd be like, stay away from me, to violence. That's depending on the level of like boundary crossed.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You just mentioned permission. What is it? What's the correct term? Permission-based marketing.
Yeah, that's
And then also there's a term, direct response marketing. What's the difference between them?
okay. So permission-based marketing is usually aligned with inbound marketing. And so people search for you and they find you, is typically what's described as inbound marketing. And so people type words into a search engine. They're looking for a problem. They're looking for a solution to a problem, or they're trying to understand something better, but they're searching. And then they find you, your website, your videos on YouTube, wherever they are. Outbound marketing is when you go out to find them. And so then you're searching for them. You might be prospecting, as some people call it. and trying to create a list of people or contacts based on criteria that fit a customer segment, or which is just basically a group of people with shared characteristics.
Mm.
And then you send them a message to see if it's something that's relevant for them and if they're interested. And at that point, it can become permission-based marketing, because it's like, hey, well, do you have this problem? Do you want to know more? And if they say yes, great, they've given permission. And then you continue the conversation like a normal, healthy human being. But if they say no and you keep talking, then they should slap you. Like it's
Run away.
yeah, it's
Unsubscribe. Yeah.
it's no means no. Like, it's yeah. So it's yeah, that.
Going back to Zach's example
Mm-hmm.
again. So, film industry, everything is closed right now, and yet during this time, during the pandemic, he managed to book 30,000+ in revenue.
Yep.
What we just talked about, like permission-based marketing, or direct response, like what do you attribute that success to? And I guess I'm also curious about, he must have pivoted, right, in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So how did this happen?
Right. So as part of my framework, I've developed 5 levels of certainty tests. And they just naturally map towards the stages of growing your business: idea testing, discovery testing, then validation testing, acceleration testing, and then scale testing. The first 3 steps are relevant for like this conversation here, right? So with idea testing, I tell people your words make sense to other humans who tend to be like subject matter experts. They know what you're talking about. You're testing the idea to see if, like, on paper, it even makes sense to pursue it or explore it or what have you. But the next step, discovery testing, is you measure what your audience says to then find the answers to the sales questions that you have, that we spoke about earlier. Then once you get those sales answers, great. Now you can go into validation testing to measure what they do. Measure what a few of them do. First, you measured what a few of them said. Now you measure what a few of them do to see if their words match their actions. And at that point, you see if the people who said that they gave you these sales answers, now you get to see if these sales answers are true. And they're true when they give you money for the thing that they said they wanted help with. And so Zach executed on those 3 stages of testing. And we did that over like that 6 to 7 week period. We just like ran through it super fast. And that was the outcome that we were able to create with just the doing the idea testing, the discovery testing, and then the validation testing.
And for the idea piece, did he just come up with an idea, or his students or his clients tell him what they wanted, rather?
The cool thing about idea testing is that our brains are experts at creating ideas for us. And here's what ideas usually sound like: I don't think anyone's gonna buy. That's a great idea.
Let's run with it.
Yeah. Let's go test it. And so that's usually the starting point of some ideas. But the way the ideas come up, they actually usually map to one of the 5 parts of the sales framework. I don't think anyone's gonna buy, aka I don't have any sales opportunities. I don't think they'll buy at this price. What amount will they pay? The second part. And then it's like, oh gosh, I don't think they'll buy this thing anymore because it's not worth it.
Mm.
What's the long and short term value they're wanting? What problem are they trying to solve? The problem has changed. And so maybe there's a different problem that they have that we should be solving. And then I don't think that they're gonna buy this course. I don't think they're gonna buy coaching and stuff anymore. They're gonna spend money on different things. Oh, okay. So maybe the exact offer format has changed, and so maybe there's some other way that they're wanting value. Okay, people don't want to buy stuff in person anymore because there's a pandemic. What about virtual offers? What about digital offers? What kind of digital offer? What's going to make sense for them because they don't have a whole lot of time anymore, and the kids are at home, and what's going to work with them now that things have changed in their world. What's the offer format they need right now to realize the value that they're wanting? And then finally, oh gosh, I don't know if they want this right now. What's sales timing? When do they want it? Is this now an urgent thing for them? Do they want it like right now, or are they wanting it in like 1 to 3 months, and so on and so forth? And so we got to factor in all those things. But usually folks have an uncertainty, aka a question that they're asking, or an assumption that they're making that we need to explore. And we can then explore that. We first flesh out the idea, the fullness of the idea that they actually have with the idea testing. And then we go see what their people say with the discovery testing. And then we see what their people do. And then we walk away with sales certainty because we actually just saw if they bought or not.
Yeah. No, this is amazing, because what I also was just thinking, how, there are, I don't know, let's say 2 groups of people who think, during some crazy times like what we're experiencing right now, nobody's buying anything, right? And they're like, oh, nobody's going to buy anything. But then there's another group of people, like probably Jay, you, myself, Ramit, who believe that even during, very difficult times, people still buy, but
Some buy toilet paper.
Right. Right. So I also just remembered, I think it was sometime in March, maybe to the end of March, one of our mutual acquaintances and mentors also, she had a launch, and I think that was like a 7-figure launch in March, when we were all, we kind of started all freaking out, like what's happening in the world. But so through this tasks that you're describing, this is how you help your clients to sort of regain that confidence that people will buy. You just need to know what they want and how they want it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is way easier to sell when people tell you what they want you to sell them on. Then it's not really much of a sale.
Yeah.
It's just an offer.
Yeah.
That you already know they want, because they told you exactly what they wanted. Now it's time for you to just, like a waiter, you took the order. Now you go make it. You give them the thing that you want, and then they give you the money for it.
Beautiful.
Like, just straightforward. It doesn't have to be. No one is. Yeah, no one's at a restaurant like, oh gosh, the waiter's not like, oh man, oh gosh, are they gonna buy? And it's like, well, they're here at the restaurant, and now they're just gonna look through the menu, and then they're going to tell you. It can be that simple.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be guesswork. And then it's just a logical conversation. You focus on just serving them.
Yeah. Serving. I love that word too. Again, it's going back all the way to having people at the center of your everything.
Yep.
Yeah. No, this is, and I love this also metaphor, being at a restaurant. It's like always, for myself as well, I have that obviously, sometimes that fear that comes in
Mm-hmm.
different colors. That are they gonna buy? Are they not gonna buy? Am I, what am I? Yeah, I think, what is it? Is it a fear of rejection, or what is this? Like, what is happening in people's heads when we're like doubting stuff?
There's a billion and one things that could be going on. I mean, there are like over 400 cognitive biases that every
Mm,
human is susceptible to. And I found that sometimes it's better to just tell them to fuck off. The cognitive biases, not the people. And the reason for that is it's irrelevant. What I found through years of improvisational acting is
yeah.
that in the early days of improv, I was terrified. But then, about like a year into it, I remember going out on stage, and it was the last show of the year. And I remember asking myself, how do we make sure the audience has the best time possible?
Mm, exactly.
And no fear,
Mm,
because I took the focus off of myself and I put it onto the audience.
mm,
That's what service looks like.
yeah.
How can I be of service to another? That fear doesn't come up when we take the focus off of ourselves and we put it onto others.
Yeah.
We try to focus on how is it we're going to make show up the best for them, make sure that they had the best time, make sure that their experience is best, the outcomes that they have is best. Uh, that fear doesn't show up.
Yep.
And so it's usually just even more helpful to just refocus on a different question, which is how can I help them have their best experience possible?
I'm glad that you brought the example of public speaking and being on stage, because I never understood the advice that sometimes people give, just imagine the audience naked. And I'm like, how does that, like, first of all,
So
who came up with this?
I don't know, but it's like, all right, great. You imagine them naked. Maybe that's going to make you more afraid. Like, because I mean,
Because
I
it's
don't know.
like,
It's like, what are you going to
to,
see? Like, ooh.
no, but to me it's also from this like perspective of a human being. It's like it's basically imagining somebody in a so much more vulnerable state. And
Mhm.
how is it supposed to uplift you? How is it supposed to empower you when you are? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, I hadn't thought about it from that specific perspective, but I agree. Like that, no matter which way you slice it, like it's there are better ways to go about it. Um, and then undressing people, I mean, that in itself is like a violation, right? It's like, oh gosh, when this person gets ready to, they're stripping everybody down naked in front of them. Like, what kind of person is this? Like, we already spoke about like the stages of human intimacy. It's like skipping a couple steps. Like, it's like have
Yeah,
a
that's
conversation first, and take it from there.
yeah,
You know.
but I love that too. How, and this is how I refrain for myself as well when I get those little demons in my mind. Whether it's fear of rejection or whatever that might be, I have to remind myself what I am doing for people is going to help them. And this is like,
Mm-hmm.
I focus on that. And then, yeah, and then things become so much easier
Mm-hmm.
in that sense.
100%.
Yeah.
And there is an exception. If you don't know how to serve them, then you
Mm.
should be afraid. Like, 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 go figure that out,
Mm.
and then circle back, or lower the risk for yourself and them.
Can you
Um,
actually give an example? What does it mean when you don't know how to serve them?
well, this is also another one of my specialties: customer research, customer development, from like startup world and stuff like that. But when you are in the process of, well, yeah, perfect example, right? Let's say a discovery test, you know, in these like 5 levels of certainty tests that I have. And then the thing that they're asking you for isn't something you're sure you know how to do.
Ah, okay.
Maybe they said, you know, maybe you do coaching with them now, and they're like, I want a course. And you're like, I've never built a course before. How do I do that? You know, then
Ask
it's like,
Mark.
well, yes, thank you for the plug. I totally appreciate it. But you know, it's like, but or maybe they say they want a 1-day in-person workshop, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, I've never done a 1-day in-person workshop. How do I do that?
Ask
Then
Mark.
that too, yes, like it would make sense to learn from someone who's already
Mm-hmm.
done it, figure out how to do it, and then deliver on that.
Mm.
You know, if again going back to our example of being at a restaurant and someone asks for something and you're not sure if you and your team can deliver it, they ask for something that's off the menu.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go talk to the chef.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if that's something we can do. And
Yeah.
then go have a conversation with the chef, and the chef might be like, no, we have no oysters. We can't get oysters in the next 5 minutes. It's just not gonna happen. And so it's just not gonna happen. Or come back, or maybe it'll be on the menu next week. We need time, you know. But you see what's possible, and then you figure out if it can be done, and then what are the conditions it can be done on, and then you share that.
Mm.
You just be honest with it
Yeah.
and go from there.
Again, another great word. Honest. Honesty is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you
'Cause-
work with clients, or when you work with clients, when you are friends, like anywhere, I feel like honesty is so important. Honesty, transparency.
yeah. Um, Honesty requires awareness,
Mm.
which we don't always have.
Mm-hmm.
And you can only be as honest as your current level of awareness.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, can we get oysters? I don't know, because I'm not aware of whether or not we have oysters or not. I need to go create some awareness whether or not we have some oysters, and let me get back to you on that. But then if you're just like, yeah, and then you go back there and it's like, we don't have any oysters. Oh,
Here's something that looks like an oyster, but
oh God.
yeah,
Yeah,
that no, it's not gonna.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
how
not gonna
often it's
end well,
happening.
right? What
Yeah.
happens when you are misrepresenting yourself? Like, what happens?
You're out of integrity, you lose trust, and then you also sometimes end up with lawsuits.
Yeah,
That's how
remember
that
that, everyone.
goes.
If you don't have oysters, just say so.
Basically. But what you also destroy is your reputation,
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
and it will take a lifetime to build a reputation and a moment to destroy it.
Yeah,
Um, so guard it.
yeah,
Guard it with integrity,
yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Okay, this is great. Do you like what's happening with you? Last time we talked, when we were doing this thing, you were missing dancing and
Yes.
working
Yes.
out. What's happening? What's happening?
Well,
Mm-hmm.
I found out
Mm-hmm.
the gym has reopened, and I'm excited about that. So
That's awesome.
I am very excited about that, and also apprehensive about that
Mm.
simultaneously. Um,
How are they gonna like? What is it gonna look like?
um, Radar, like temperature check
Mm-hmm.
at the door to see
Mm-hmm.
if anyone has a fever. Hand sanitizer reducing the capacity of the gym to 30% of its
Mm-hmm.
total capacity. Um, Closing and opening later, closing earlier to allow the staff to have additional time for deep
Clean.
sanitization.
Yeah.
Um, and then also to even get entry, you have to have a mask as well to
Yeah.
get into the facility. Those are some of the, and also requiring that gym members wipe down with sanitizer before as well as after they use each piece of equipment. Those are some of the what it's like to live in a pandemic with a gym. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you're still excited.
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Yes. Very much so.
Good.
Very much.
What about dancing?
Dancing has not. Social dancing has not returned because dance is like one of the highest like risk things. So it really is no telling how long that it really depends on how the trends of new cases are, area by area, state by state, so on and so forth. How that goes, because people who dance tend to also travel as well, and so just a high risk group as far as that is concerned.
So you haven't learned dancing just by yourself in the kitchen?
Well, then it wouldn't be social dancing. then it's just dancing.
Just dancing.
Yeah.
It improves the mood.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, then it's
just not what
dancing.
You want. Yeah, it's just not what you want.
Social dancing means you got a partner and you're dancing with a person, not by yourself. So.
All right, Mark. Thank you so much for taking the time for me. I really, really appreciate it. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed it because I did. Mark did.
Always. Good time.
Thank you, everyone. Please subscribe, like, do whatever, comment. I love hearing from you, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.